So Houston's been an absolutely amazing ecosystem for us for a couple reasons. One is the kind of company we are, like working, with chemistry, working with hard tech. Just the amount of talent here is really unprecedented.
You're tuning in to Forging the Future. And today I'm in the studio with a founder who is revolutionizing the transition to green energy at Syzygy Plasmonics. Join me in welcoming Trevor Best to the show. Thanks, Trevor.
Chris, it is absolutely fantastic to be here. There is no place on earth I'd rather be than this seat right now.
Sweet. Well, we keep crossing paths, actually, and I think the last time was at the EOI event, Entrepreneur of the Year, where we were both finalists.
Yeah.
And just happened to be at the same table for some reason. I don't know how that happened, but
saw you at the Rice business plan forum, where soft tech made a big splash.
Well,
it was amazing to watch.
Tell me a little bit about how you got here in Houston. You're from West Texas.
Yeah, so going back in time, looking at like the Trevor Best origin story, it all starts in 1985 in Midland, Texas. Born and raised in Midland, out in West Texas. Energy industry is in my blood, probably in a very real way. Yeah.
Are there a lot of oil wells out there, maybe?
Just a couple.
Okay.
And went to college at Texas Tech. Got a couple majors in business, and then went and joined the energy industry for Baker Hughes. And Baker ended up bringing me out to Houston in 2011. And so been here in Houston, for about the past 12 years or so, and I've gone full native. Know my whole way around the city through and through at this point.
So native Houstonian almost. You got here as fast as you could.
Yeah, it took a little bit, but got here as fast as I could.
Yeah, I got here in 81. So, then what inspired you to take the red pill and leave like an enterprise like Baker Hughes and forge off onto your own?
Yeah, so Baker was a great company. They're like family to me. I learned a lot of the skills that I'm using to grow Syzygy while I was at Baker. But there were kind of two things. One was I met my co-founder, and we both had the itch to go start something. I had started 3 companies before Syzygy, and none of them ever made it far enough that they were worth leaving Baker and going in full time on.
So you did that on the side?
Yeah. So basically every day, get off work at 5 p.m. and by 6 p.m. was working on whatever side project I had going until midnight. Would work all day Saturday and Sunday trying to get something going.
Tell me a little bit about that. What kind of companies were they?
Okay, so the first one was H2 open source.
Okay.
So H2O. I thought that was really clever.
Brilliant.
We were going to open source solutions to third world water problems. So like you would basically have a forum where people could post an issue like, hey, there's a village in Africa that their well went down, and someone could be like, oh, hey, I have a drilling company, I can drill them a new well, and somebody else could be like, I have the money to fund it, and you could open source these projects to help solve water issues. Picked the wrong team. No one else really cared. No one showed up to the meetings.
First-time founder, that's first startup, right?
Yeah, and after a couple months, of realizing I was the only one putting any work into it, decided like, hey, that's probably not going to make it. And that one folded. The second one was a mobile fuel delivery app, which I actually have seen a bunch of people try and start this company. Basically like Uber Eats for gasoline. You hit a button and car with a giant gas tank on it comes and fills your car with gas.
I've seen a bunch of those, and they target fleets and things like that, but I can see the appeal of it. And this, when was this? Like 2000
This was at 2015.
2015.
And that one was Fueler. Mm-hmm. It is incredibly difficult to make money with that business model. And whenever I finally built out a true financial model to figure out the unit economics, I found that you really can't make money doing that. The one that I have seen successful was Yoshi. I think they ended up getting bought by ExxonMobil. And they started out as fuel delivery, and if you use them now, they will come wash your car, change your oil, switch your wiper blades, and they'll basically just give you the gas for free because they're making money on everything else. But yeah, gas is a very low margin business, and it's not very difficult to go fill your car with gas.
There's a lot of small business owners. I know, like I had a service that came out and washed my cars, right? Because I'm not really set up for that in my current house. I would always do it myself before, right? You know, but it'd come out and I'm like, you know, if you actually set something up and actually came out on a regular basis, I do need my car washed more than once a year. But when I'm thinking about it, you know, and have you come out, you know, you could come out once a quarter, you could do once a month, you know, you could have, you know, I was trying to coach him on being an entrepreneur, you know, but, and then he never called me again, right? So you can't force people to be entrepreneurs. Well, what was the third one?
So the third one was the first one with my current co-founder, Dr. Khatiwada, and we were working on a water bottle that was, you know, filled with this special coating that would kill bacteria and virus. It is the same kind of coating that they use to fog operating rooms, so like biofilms won't grow. And the premise was you could basically scoop up like dirty, you know, bayou water or something and shake the water bottle for, you know, 60 seconds, and it would kill all the bacteria and virus and be relatively safe to drink. So we made a prototype. We brewed this like really nasty bucket of bacteria water in, you know, my basement. My girlfriend at the time was pissed because it smelled disgusting. And we did our first test and we got like a 97% kill, which was like, oh wow, there's something interesting happening here. And then we found out that the person we were buying the coating from definitely did not have the right to sell it, and that BASF and Dow were like suing each other over who owned it. And we were like, oh my God, if we try and bring this to market, we're going to get crushed. So learned the importance of team, learned the importance of like, you know, evaluating, you know, the business model and making sure it can make money, learned the importance of validating the technology and that it was like free and clear.
How did you find out whether it was free or clear or not? I mean, was that part of your due diligence or did it just happen by accident?
I mean, so we were applying for grants and part of that was like, you know, asking questions about the IP, and it was like, oh, we should do an IP search, and we were looking at these like silane coatings and, you know, exactly what class this one was, and then, you know, those lawsuits started coming up in the Google searches, and that's when we were like, oh man, this is going to be...
I mean, I see a little bit of a pattern there. Of course, both of them were water oriented. Do you have like a kind of a focus or a desire to do something for like the greater good? I mean, both of those solve some, you know, real problems, right? You know?
Absolutely. So from those, Suman and I, we came up with a framework. We called it TMI, kind of as a joke on Too Much Info, but it was a technology, market, and impact. And so we would assess the technology. We would, you know, check out the IP, make sure it was free and clear. We would build a techno-economic model. We would make sure that the inventing team, you know, because we weren't inventing these, we were looking at like academic papers and things like that, make sure that they were credible, you know, and had experience commercializing tech before. Then market, you know, we would build out a financial model, make sure that thing could make money. You know, we would call customers and actually ask them, if we built something like this, would you buy it? And then finally, impact, we would do an impact assessment. If we do this, is the, you know, result on society like net positive? Does this make a good positive impact on the world?
I think that's something that maybe more founders could and should do, because a lot of that, you know, hey, before we put the time, money, and effort into this, would you actually buy it? What would you pay for it? You know, if we built it, would you come? You know? And so I think that's a good model. And did you use that for Syzygy? Is that how you ended up with Syzygy Plasmonics?
Yeah, so Syzygy, like the core tech behind Syzygy, you know, is really the idea that wouldn't die. And so this is probably like idea number 80 that we fed into that, you know, technology market impact assessment, where, you know, we would look at things like concentrated solar, and we would look at things like, you know, new types of materials to make wear resistant, like shoulder and hip implants that would last longer, looked at like thermoelectric materials, all kinds of things. When we found the Syzygy photocatalyst, actually the first paper we read wasn't that exciting. It was interesting, you know, but it wasn't that exciting. And we went and talked to the professors, and they're, you know, we were talking to them about it and talking about catalyst metrics and things like that. And they were like, hey, you know, this is great, but check out this data that we're about to publish. And when they showed us those numbers, and we went and started like comparing them against what was in industry, and we saw, you know, orders of magnitude increase over what they're doing in industry today for like catalyst activity. We saw, you know, the fact that it was a platform, we saw that it had anti-coking properties, and
what
all
is
these...
it exactly? You know, so I mean, if you had to describe it, you know, in your 1 minute pitch, I mean, what is Syzygy Plasmonics? What is it? What is it doing?
So can I do this twice? Can I do this at the company level and then the science level?
Sure, yeah.
Because if I get too much, I love the science, and if I get too much into the science, I'll put some people to sleep.
No, you can geek out. This is called Forging the Future, so let's go for it.
Oh, hell yeah. So at the company level, Syzygy is making a new type of chemical reactor that eliminates combustion from chemical processes. So if you think about like a refinery or a chemical plant, you'll see all of these smokestacks. Those are because they have to burn a lot of fuel to power those processes that make fuel, that make fertilizer, that make all the raw materials that society needs. Our reactor eliminates that need for combustion and all the associated emissions, and because of that has the potential to prevent up to a gigaton of CO2 going into the atmosphere every year.
Wow. So it's a big ESG play for that. I mean,
huge. Mm-hmm. So it allows that whole industry to better participate in the energy transition and to electrify their chemical processes, and drive them with renewable electricity instead of driving them with combusting, some kind of fossil fuel like natural gas. And if y'all remember one thing about us, we help to reduce cost and emissions by electrifying these very hard to abate processes associated with refineries and chemical plants. And then from a science standpoint, so our science is a bit esoteric. It's out there. These two professors started down this rabbit hole of nanophotonics in the 80s. Professor Halas and Professor Nordlander from Rice. That turned into this field of study called Plasmonics through the 90s. And really in the late 90s and early 2000s, Halas and Nordlander became world's leading researchers in the field of plasmonics, which is certain materials, when you hit them with light, they create this excitation in the electrons on the outside of the material, and that is a plasmon. And they started making these nanoparticles that were near perfect light harvesters. So incredibly good at catching photons and turning them into energized electrons. And then in 2016, they were like, what happens if we combine these with traditional catalysts? They didn't know what to expect, but turns out that it makes an unbelievably good catalyst. And right now our catalysts are outperforming catalysts in industry on pretty much every meaningful metric, like activity, selectivity, stability. And so they made this super catalyst, but no one had ever made a reactor to utilize this kind of catalyst. It needs light, so delivering just tremendous amounts of photons into a chemical reactor, something that hadn't been done before. And pretty much the whole work of the company has been to develop that reactor and give this catalyst the conditions it needs to make fuel, fertilizer, hydrogen, and other clean energy sources, at scale and economically.
Interesting. Well, we had Paul Cherukuri on a few episodes ago, the VP of Innovation at Rice, and I know he's really trying to encourage this type of technology transfer out of Rice into industry. How did you get plugged into that? I mean, how do you take like an idea in a paper at Rice and get the rights to it and turn that into a business?
So it started off with a conversation with the professors, and essentially, like, the professors get called all the time by everyone. They're quite well renowned. If anybody wants to see something impressive, just Google Naomi Halas and find her bio page, and her resume's on there. Just look at the front page of her resume and see all the awards and accolades she's won. It's like, wow. So we called them and we were like, hey, we're really interested in your technology. We'd like to start a company. And they were like, yeah, you and everyone else. And thanks, bye. And my co-founder was like, I'm a Rice alumni. You owe me 5 minutes. And Peter Nordlander was like, okay, you've got 5 minutes. And Suman is very gregarious, went to their office and, basically convinced them that they should hear us out. He and I worked together. We made a whole presentation talking about the business plan and different business models we could do and how we would assess their technology. We talked about our experience at Baker Hughes developing new technologies. And we convinced them to give us a second meeting. Second meeting turned into a third meeting, and we spent about 7 months going back to Rice University. It was every Wednesday at 7 p.m. and we would show up at their office and we would ask them like a list of questions. And if you remember, I said that this was the idea that wouldn't die. Like we threw everything at it. Like how much does it cost to scale? Trying to work out like how many photons do you need to drive these chemical reactions, trying to find some reason that this wouldn't work. And for the life of us, we could not find a reason why it wouldn't work. So after about 7 months, then you gotta turn all your assets into cash, quit your job, dump that cash into the company, and take a flying leap off the cliff and hope you learn to fly before you hit the ground.
That was the impetus for the red pill on that one, huh? So, burn the boats and make the leap.
Yep.
So is it like you end up having, are they co-founders, or you license the technology, or how does that work, like business-wise, if I can ask?
Yeah, so the professors are co-founders, and so they have like minority shares in the company. They aren't involved in the day-to-day operation of it, but I mean, we talk to them pretty frequently, like a couple times a month. And if we have any like scientific questions, they're there to help us understand like what is happening at the atomic levels in the catalyst. They are continuing to develop the tech and publish papers. So as they come up with new catalysts, those are also included under the license. And they introduced us to the Rice Office of Technology Transfer, Rice OTT. OTT, because we got introduced by the professors, took us seriously. And we worked with them to sign an option agreement, to have an option to license. And then we went and started talking to venture capitalists. And when we actually were bringing first money in, then both Rice, OTT, and the venture capitalists were, it was this funny chicken and egg situation where Rice OTT was like, get investment and then we can execute the license. And the VCs were like, we don't want to invest until the license is executed. And you learn how to do this a lot as a founder, where you have a bunch of parties and you manage to align it where like the license and the investment like happen pretty much hand in hand
on the same day sometimes. Right? It's kind of a race. I've had that happen where you have both parties involved and you're trying to essentially sign a contract right one right after the other, right? Because no one really wants to go first.
A needs B and B needs A.
So this was 2017, and did you have a seed or you self-fund? Sound like you sold your own assets and put money in on the seed stage, right?
Yeah. So 2017, we started off with our own money, and that was like initial patents and like very minimal business expenses to like fly places and meet people. But it was very bare bones. We had no employees, no lab. Basically we just had the papers from Rice and we were trying to convince people to fund us. We ended up raising a total of $900,000 and closed that in like February, March 2018.
As a seed round?
Yeah. It was a rolling close. And so towards the end of 2017, we had about 300 in the bank, and working with our first investors, we were like, let's go ahead and like hire first employee and sign a lease for a lab space, it's like a month-to-month lease with one of our friends. We were working out of their warehouse. So it's literally like it's
a garage startup.
Yeah.
Well, who was in that first $900K? I mean, just generally, was it friends and family round, or is it like Rice alumni, or who actually put money in?
A group of angel investors out of Houston, and those were kind of friends and family. Some of them knew us from Baker Hughes, and some of them knew them and trusted them. There were about 2 investors that came in through, I don't know if you remember, like Start Houston or Station Houston, right when it was first.
With JR.
Right when it was first forming, that we met through there. And we got 500 from there. And then right as soon as that was in the bank, we did have 2 VCs come in. And it was Breakthrough Energy and Evoke Innovations.
Now, this is a highly technical startup, right? And it's hard to raise capital in normal circumstances, but how did you actually sell people on the dream of like, hey, we can actually do this new thing?
So that was a journey. The first time we started pitching was like the beginning of 2017, and my pitch was awful. it was just absolute garbage. I would walk into an investor's office and I'd be like, we have, a plasmonic nanomaterial that can elicit hot electron transfer under the right, amount of incident photon flux, and like nobody cared at all. And when you start because I wasn't working anymore, it's kind of like lighting a stick of dynamite. You've only got so much time until your life blows up because you run out of money. When that fuse starts getting really short and you get really hungry, you start learning how to pitch better and just going everywhere and talking to everyone you possibly can.
How did you learn to get better? Was that you're Googling? Are you looking at winning pitch decks? I mean, how are you getting that coaching and mentorship? How did you get better at it?
Yeah, so one was I started showing up to Station Houston, and the first time I pitched this publicly was on stage at Station. The other one is so I was actually a stage actor. And I did it basically every school year from kindergarten through 12th grade. And I used to do improv and things like that, and just have had some level of training in reading the audience. And so for me, it's kind of like sprinting, but with face down with your head in the dirt. It's very painful. But if you pitch every day and you're like, oh, when I say this thing, everyone leans back and goes to sleep. And you're like, oh, but when I say this, everyone leans forward and gets really interested. I need to say that more. And then just kind of trial and error. Oh, that message didn't work. Let's drop that one. Oh, whenever I say it this way, it sounds really good. Going into the Series A, I actually took this Series A boot camp from Capital Factory. So I would go to Austin to take this boot camp, and I learned kind of investor lingo and what they care about. I was introduced to the Guy Kawasaki 10-20-30 deck, if you've heard of that format, and started to really learn how to pitch. And then as we got into the B, and definitely by the time we did the C, you get it down. You learn how to simplify the message to the core points.
And you finished raising your Series C now?
Yeah.
And how much did you raise?
So in our Series C, that was in November of last year, we raised $76 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations. And how much have you raised total?
All together, we're at around 110.
Wow, that's fantastic. So why Houston? I mean, what's going on here? You mentioned Station Houston, and this was a couple of years ago, but tell me a little bit about your experience in being a founder in Houston.
So Houston's been an absolutely amazing ecosystem for us for a couple reasons. One is the kind of company we are, working with chemistry, working with hard tech. Just the amount of talent here is really unprecedented. And for a company building industrial hardware, you're probably not going to be able to find an ecosystem where you have just this wealth of, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, chemical engineers, anything related to energy. There's just amazing talent here. And a lot of people are interested in, getting out of the energy industry to participate in clean tech. So hiring's been very easy. Our customer base, is here. So a lot of the companies that might adopt our technology, it's literally just a 15-minute drive from downtown for them to come visit us. So really easy to access customers. The one thing that Houston, I think, is working on and needs to continue working on, and people like you are helping to solve, is the access to capital. And that's been the only thing that we've had to kind of go outside the city to find. But a lot of other startups, what we're finding is they might be able to get the capital in their ecosystem, but to find the talent, to find real estate that's not crazy expensive, and build the infrastructure, and to really scale their company, they're looking at coming to Houston. And so a common theme that we're seeing amongst a lot of startups now is raise money somewhere else, and then once they get the initial data, and they're ready to scale a little bit, then they move to Houston to grow here.
So you didn't have any investors in Houston?
Well, actually, we did have an investor from Houston, and this was in our Series A. And that was Goose Capital. They're a super angel group associated with Rice University. They are freaking awesome, and they led our Series A. Got some really fantastic investors like Evoke Innovations. They're based out of Canada. We've got The Engine, which is associated with MIT. We've got Horizons out of Hong Kong.
How did you find all of those? They're very spread out across the world, right? So, I mean, how many did you have to pitch to raise $100 million, first of all? And then how did you find these investors that were interested in your technology?
Show up to everything you can. Every networking event, every happy hour. I apply to every pitch competition I possibly could. Would travel all the time.
Across the world, it sounds like. Is that right?
Mainly in the U.S. Okay. In the beginning, but post COVID for our C, it was going to Europe and Asia. Hitting pretty much every location we possibly can.
How many times do you think you pitched an investor?
How many times pitch one person?
Total investors. I mean, total pitches.
Man, a while ago I worked out the numbers, and if we're counting like everyone in the audience that gets exposed to us, so if I go pitch on stage in front of 200 people, and if we count them, the numbers are about 1,000 to 1. For every 1,000 people that get exposed to Syzygy, about 1 invests. For people who actually we take meetings with, in the early days it was about 100 to 1. So I would pitch the company 100 times to get 1 investor. Recently, the numbers have been getting better, and we're now at about 30 to 1. For every 30 investors that we pitch the company to, 1 will invest.
It's a lot of work. Right?
It's a tremendous amount
of
work.
And a lot of founders I've found, they just want to work on their company, right? They just want to do the technology. They want to work on the company. They don't want to spend time fundraising. And they think they can do 10 pitches and walk away with $1 million or whatever. But, it's a constant battle. Right?
Yeah, there's no way. 10 pitches and you might get 1. I don't feel comfortable unless if we've got 30 or 40 people interested in us. That's whenever I start to be okay, I think we'll be fine. And kind of how we've structured the company from the beginning is, I am, bring in the money, bring in the customers. I am pretty much fundraising 100% of the time. My co-founder, Dr. Khatiwada, he's the one who makes the reactor work. And, we have a deal. If I bring in money, then he has to make the reactor work. And, holy hell, he's done it every time. And when the reactor's working, it's been pretty easy to bring in more money.
Do you have any other advice for founders that are getting started here in Houston?
Absolutely. Get involved with the community. Go talk to, if you're in clean tech, go talk to Greentown Labs. Go talk to the ION. If you're at Rice University, talk to the Liu Idea Lab. If you're at U of H, talk to the Wolf Center for Entrepreneurship. Go to the networking events. Show up. If I was going to give a single piece of advice, though, it would be never give up, never get discouraged. You don't actually lose unless if you give up. Every failure is just an opportunity to learn. And if you look back at Syzygy's history, a lot of people see success, but whenever I'm looking back on it, I see just tons and tons and tons of failures, and I see an awesome team that never gave up and would come back in the next morning and get back on it. And if perfection was the goal, then we are far from that. But if progress is the goal, we have made absolutely tremendous progress. And because of that progress, we've now got the attention of the world. We've got, just to list off some of the investors that are interested in us, and actively looking to deploy our technology: Chevron, BP, Equinor, Aramco, Toyota, Latte Chemical, Sumitomo Corporation of America, Pan American Energy. Really tremendous investor list supporting us.
So they want to be investors, and I assume that they would be potential customers, right, of the technology?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, Trevor, thanks for being on the show and sharing some of your words of wisdom and inspiration for other founders. I've got my Einstein socks on, my funny ones, but I thought, your reactor reminded me of course, nuclear reaction, but it's in a much cleaner and more efficient manner. And I see you've got your shoes on, which I noticed, but they're actually company branded. Tell me a little bit about those.
So we started getting the Syzygy shoes early on, and when I was out raising our Series A, I made myself this pair of custom Converse, and those were the prototypes. And they were, I don't know, I have a flair for the dramatic, so they were bold. And as soon as we got done with the Series A, we bought all of our employees a pair, and that's because we walk this clean tech path together, and we get to know what it's like to walk in each other's shoes. And then when we went and raised the Series B, we got another version that was a little different, and then we bought all the employees those. And we didn't buy anyone the Series A shoes anymore. And then now that we have closed the Series C, these that you see here are the Series C shoes, and we have bought all the employees those. It's pretty cool. There's about 20 employees that have the Series A shoes, and you'll see them every now and again. And the new employees are like, oh, whoa, those are the...
limited edition?
Yeah, those are the really old ones.
Well, I have some socks here for you. You can wear with your shoes. I actually got a pair for you. It's a gladiator on a shark.
Oh, that's
amazing. Which I think kind of sums up being an entrepreneur. There's a few analogies out there. I just listened to a podcast by Zach Coolius. He's a friend of mine and a VC out of California. He describes an entrepreneurship being like a gladiator. And you're in the arena, and you're fighting off opponent after opponent, and then you beat one guy, and then two show up, and you beat those two guys, and then two more show up, but then one of them's on a chariot, and then your spear breaks. And you're battling until either you die or you exit, right?
Yep.
The ring. So anyway, thanks for being in the ring and being a gladiator. Super exciting technology. I think it's going to be really impactful, and happy that you're here in Houston. So thank you.
Well, hey, thanks for having me. We're excited to fight for that future, and go get in the Coliseum and make something good for everybody.
Go Texas. Right?
Hell yeah. Awesome. Hey, thank you so much, Chris. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Mine too. Thank you.